you find yourself sharing complaints about your spouse and or your marriage with someone else. You find yourself daydreaming or fantasizing about what life might be like with this person. And you feel a sense of excitement or an emotional high when you receive text messages or see their name pop up on your phone. Hey beautiful, are you done with the pain, devastation, and overwhelm that marital betrayal has thrown at you? And you need a real roadmap to recovery. And you also desire to heal God's way. Well, you're in the right place. Hi, I'm Lisa, a betrayal, trauma, and infidelity recovery specialist who went from being crushed and humiliated by my own husband's affair to a global sought-after recovery specialist, helping Christian women and couples just like you heal and recover from the devastation of marital betrayal, all while doing it God's way. Are you ready to dive in? I know I am. So, grab your favorite latte, maybe a glass of wine, snuggle up with your favorite blanket on the couch, and let's focus on you right now. Let's do this, beautiful. Welcome back to the Beauty Beyond Betrayal podcast. Today we are going to explore a topic that's often misunderstood, but it's just as devastating as a physical affair. What is it? It's an emotional affair, or what we call emotional infidelity. And I've come across a number of people recently who are struggling to understand what it means to have an emotional affair or be involved in emotional infidelity. There are different definitions to this, and people look at emotional connection differently. You see, what I have found is that until we can bring truth into this topic, there are going to be those that don't believe what they're actually involved in is an emotional affair. You see, emotional infidelity doesn't always begin with physical attraction. It often starts with something that seems extremely innocent. It could be a friendship. It could be a coworker who listens to you when you're complaining, someone you confide in. But slowly, over time, an emotional energy that belongs only in your marriage begins to shift elsewhere. Today, I'm going to unpack exactly what an emotional affair is, what it looks like, how it develops, and what you can do if you or your spouse have crossed that emotional line. And I think this is going to be a really good one to listen to together with your spouse so you can have that hard conversation. Let me kind of unpack it for you so that it gives you some content to explore together. So let's grab your pen and paper and let's dive in, okay? So let's first start out with really what is an emotional affair? What does it mean to be involved in emotional infidelity? Well, emotional affair is not, let me back up. An emotional affair is a non-sexual, hear me clearly on this, it's a non-sexual, emotionally intimate relationship. And it's usually with someone outside of your covenant marriage. And it involves deep emotional connection, vulnerability, and here's a key word, secrecy. Yeah, it's usually done in secret. You might not recognize you're involved in an emotional affair. And today I'm hoping that you will come to that realization if you've gone down this road. Now, in this emotional affair, while there may be no physical contact, the emotional investment is so significant that it causes your spouse to actually feel betrayed, neglected, and a lot of times replaced. And let's be honest, if you have been involved in an emotional affair, this is betrayal. Absolutely it is. Now, let's talk about it a little bit more. This emotional affair often begins with a simple friendship. Maybe it's a coworker. Maybe it's an old friend. You found them on Facebook after all these years, right? Or on Instagram. Maybe it's the ministry partner or even someone that you meet online. Now, at first, it may seem extremely innocent. We're just like conversing, just periodically liking each other's post if it's online, or just saying something at work or, at church. And it's very, very innocent. But then you start sharing thoughts, personal struggles, maybe frustrations about your spouse or your marriage. Over time, these conversations become more frequent, more personal, and soon that person that you are sharing all of this with becomes the first one that you think of when something good or bad happens, and not your spouse. Yeah, you start to think of them instead of your spouse. Actually, your heart begins to twinge because you want to be able to share these things with them. Emotional intimacy and secrecy are the key indicators. Now, let me say that again. Emotional intimacy, that's where you're being very intimate. That's you're seeing into one another. You're sharing deep, vulnerable things with each other emotionally, right? And secrecy are the key indicators. Now, you might tell yourself, oh, it's not an affair. We're just close friends. But if you're hiding the depth of that relationship, or you're just hiding the conversations that you're having with the person, the text messages, the phone calls, the meetups, maybe the bypassing at the water cooler at work. For those of you who remember water coolers, any of those things that you are not sharing, you're hiding the depth of those things. You're minimizing your spouse's discomfort or emotionally leaning on that person instead of your spouse. You've crossed a line. And I hope you heard me loud and clear. You've already crossed the line. So think about it. Take a moment. Have you done any of these? Are there text messages that your spouse doesn't know about? Are there phone calls that have been hidden, deleted from your phone? Are there chats or DMs or anything on any apps that your spouse doesn't know about, right? Is there a conversation at work or after work? Is there a longing in your heart for someone else, and your spouse knows none of what I just said? If any of that is taking place, you've crossed a line. Now, there are some key characteristics of an emotional affair that I want to share with you so that you can understand this at a deeper level. So let's break this down, okay? The first one is emotional intimacy. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, it's a deep emotional bond. You're actually bonding yourself to that person. You share personal details, fears, dreams, goals, your visions that you're not sharing with your spouse any longer. You seek comfort and validation or even understanding from this other person. You go to them instead of going to your spouse. You have opened yourself up emotionally to this person. Thus, this is emotional intimacy. Number 2 characteristic is secrecy. This is where you are hiding or downplaying your communication. Oh, it was just a text message. It was innocent. Or it was just a quick phone call. We had to discuss something at work when it really wasn't, right? Or, there were a group of people that met after work, but yet you kind of made sure you were with that person most of the time, having all of these conversations, but you did it in that setting and you didn't share everything with your wife. There were some secrets there. Maybe, again, you delete those text messages. You wait until your spouse isn't around to maybe reply to a text message. Or you even altogether avoid mentioning this person to your spouse in conversation. Transparency that you once had in your relationship is replaced by quiet concealment. That is what secrecy is. Now, here's the third characteristic. There's an emotional energy shift. An emotional energy shift. Now, emotional energy that should be invested in your marriage is now being poured into someone else. You're giving away your attention, your thought, and your affection that only belongs to your spouse. It's interesting as I record this episode, yesterday was my husband and I, it was our 12th anniversary. And it was a beautiful celebration. We were just reminiscing on the fact that everything that God has done for us in reconciling us and restoring us and just bringing us into this beautiful new covenant. And while we were at dinner, we actually were talking about the emotional energy shift that he actually kind of transferred into when he was involved in the affair. Yes, we still talk about these things. I mean, it is our life. This is what we do for a living. And so, yes, we have those conversations. And can you get to a point where you can have healthy conversations about the affair down the line? Of course you can. Anyone who truly heals from emotional destruction of betrayal can absolutely get to a point where it doesn't destroy you to talk about it anymore. Actually, you can have extremely healthy conversations about it. And that's what we help you do inside of our Marriage Redesigned program. Stay tuned. I'll tell you about that in a minute. But we had a healthy conversation, and he was very, very honest and open about the emotional energy that he now recognized he should have been investing in our marriage. He should have been pouring into me instead of pouring into her. He gave his attention away to her. He started, he was sharing his thoughts with her instead of me, and he was lavishing her with affection. All those things belonged only to me, but he was pouring it out on her during that time period. And he had a very interesting way of ending that conversation. He said, "Hun, I've come to realize I wasted 3 years of my life by doing that." And for me, that was a beautiful thing to hear, that he has come to the realization that something he thought was so wonderful when he was involved in it, the affair, was actually destructive, and it was a waste of good time that he could have been investing in our marriage. Now, he's fully invested, and we have a better marriage now than we had prior to the betrayal. But it's something when you can come to those realizations on the other side after you've healed. So emotional energy shift is one of the characteristics of an emotional affair. And here's your fourth one. It's a gateway to physical infidelity. Now, while it might not be physical yet, emotional affairs often pave the way for physical ones. This is exactly what happened with my husband. It started emotionally, and then it ended up being physical, and I see it time and time again. The intimacy already built creates a strong temptation to take things further. The more you get emotionally connected, the more you're going to seek that physical connection. Now, here is a scripture that I really want you to reflect on right now as we are talking about this. Proverbs 4:23 reminds us, above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. Everything you do flows from it. That verse is powerful because it reminds us that our heart, which is our emotional center, directs every part of our life. We are emotional beings. God created us with emotion. And when we allow emotional connections outside of the covenant of our marriage to take root, we're no longer guarding our heart. We're no longer guarding our marital relationship. We've opened it up to destruction. Now, Jesus even took this deeper in Matthew 5:28. He says, anyone who looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery with her in his heart. And it's interesting to hear that read and have Jesus say that, because I have had men actually tell me, I got so emotionally involved that I realized I'd already done the act in my mind. right? In my heart, I'd committed adultery. So what's stopping me from crossing over to the physical right now, right? So they justified their behavior based upon this verse. See how twisted the enemy can do this to you? It is so twisted. And this isn't just about physical lust, what Jesus is talking about. It's about misdirected emotional desire. Your emotional desire is to be directed to your spouse alone, not to anyone else. So I know that some of you are listening and you're like, you know what? It would really be helpful, Lisa, if you could break down, maybe give some emotional affair examples. What are the behaviors, right? What are they so that I can really see it? Because I want to make sure. Because you're probably getting a little pushback right now. You're probably trying to justify some things. So I want to make this practical for you and give you some examples that often signal emotional infidelity, because I want to bring you into some truth. Now, maybe for you, you share complaints about your spouse and or your marriage with this person. Maybe for you, you find yourself daydreaming or fantasizing about what that life might look like with this person, right? Or you feel a sense of excitement or an emotional high, so to speak, when you receive a text message from them or you see their name pop up on your phone. Maybe for you, you're having private conversations that you haven't told your spouse about, or you wouldn't want them to read. That's one you really need to think about as well. And then you seek emotional support and or comfort from that person, especially during conflict with your spouse. You find that that's your sounding board. This person is your sounding board. And they might be reciprocating that and doing the same with you. Well, I want you to stop for a moment. And if you recognize yourself, or you recognize that your spouse is in any of these, well, you're not alone. But you do need to take this seriously, okay? There are many, many people right now that are waking up to the fact that they are emotionally involved where they shouldn't be. You're not alone in this, but you need to take this very, very seriously, because this is betrayal. Now, there are 7 stages to an emotional affair. And I think it helps to know what these are so that you can start to cut the cords. And I think it's really important for you to do so. And yes, this episode is probably going to run a little longer because this is important, because you need to understand if you are involved in an emotional affair, this can lead to a physical affair. You need to stop, and stop now. So what are those 7 stages? Well, research and clinical observation show that emotional affairs typically move through 7 progressive stages. The first one is innocent friendship. Like I said earlier, it starts casually. Maybe a coworker, you can start, joking around at work, what have you. My husband's affair was a coworker. Maybe it's someone at church, and you start sharing things that you're having problems with. Maybe it's a friend on social media. Sometimes it might be someone from long ago, from high school or something, and you've reconnected with them. And you're having just chit chat right now. There's no red flags yet. It's just conversation. Well, that's the first stage. And if you are having those things and your spouse doesn't know about it, you've actually crossed a line. First off, you've crossed a line. Stop now. Okay? Step number 1 on this first 7 stages, this stage 1, stop now. Put an end to it. Tell that person, I can't do this. I've got to tell my spouse about this because this is wrong. I'm not being transparent. I'm not being open and honest. And I need to let them know about this because I can't do this. I've got to have integrity inside of my relationship. Go to your spouse. Let them know about it. Have the conversation. If you're listening to this together, have this conversation now and then come back. Okay? This is important. Here's the second stage. You start sharing personal details. And this is where you begin sharing deeper thoughts, frustrations over everyday life, about your spouse, about your kids, about work, about finances, about whatever it is, right? Or you start to share vulnerabilities. You become very vulnerable with this person. And because of that, an emotional intimacy begins to grow. You start feeling an emotional connection to this person. Here's the third stage. You start confiding about your marriage with them. You start talking about your spouse. You start talking about the struggles in your marriage. And this creates what's called, quote, an us against them, end quote, dynamic. Okay? Us against them dynamic. And what that means is it's you and this emotional partner that you've developed this emotion with. It's the two of you. It's us against them, against the one that we're complaining about. And that's a dynamic. And that can cause you to get emotionally connected at a deeper level. Here's stage number 4, increase contact. Now, this is where you actually start communicating more frequently. There's more text messaging. There's more calling. There's more DMs. There's more, maybe you get a new app so that two of you can converse on an app that your spouse doesn't know about. Or you begin meeting under, quote, innocent pretenses, end quote. They're not innocent. Okay, let's be real. That's your justification. Oh, we're just having a cup of coffee, just having a lunch, what have you. It's never just, okay? It's never just. And then you also look forward to these moments. There's a lot of anticipation in your heart. Then let's look at stage 5, emotional dependence. This is where you begin craving their attention. You long for it. They become your emotional safe space instead of your spouse. You're reaching out more, like you just depend upon that hit so that you can feel good on the daily. And when the dip happens throughout the day, they are the ones you reach out to so you can get another craving satisfied and you can feel emotionally safe once again. Here's stage number 6, secrecy and justification. Now, this is where you start hiding these conversations. You're downplaying your connection. And you're justifying your actions with thoughts like, you know what? We're just friends. Nothing has happened. We are just good friends. Like I told you earlier, it's never just. If you are hiding something, if it is in secret, it's never just. You're justifying it, right? So here's the key. Secrets in marriage are like cancer to the body. It will eventually destroy it. So if you've got anything hidden, you have crossed a line. And here's stage number 7, emotional or physical crossing. Now this is where the emotional bond becomes so strong that physical boundaries begin to blur. Maybe it's a soft tap on the shoulder, brushing up against them, right? Maybe it's a pat on the lower back. Maybe it's just a side hug, or like just a gentle hug, or just a tapping of the hand. See, the lines are blurring. The physical boundaries are starting to blur. You're justifying that it's innocent, but every touch, you get this spark of emotion deep within you. The butterflies in your stomach are full blown. And this, my friend, will end in a full-blown affair, which is deep betrayal. And I want you to know these 7 stages because many don't recognize them. They don't recognize them whatsoever. And this is where many get in trouble. You have the opportunity. This is where you have the opportunity to change what is going on right now. So what are you going to do about it? Well, before we end today, I'm going to give you signs that an emotional affair is actually happening. Because some of you might say, okay, I can see those stages, but you're still justifying right now. So let me share with you the signs that you're actually in an emotional affair. Now Now, let me just say up front that I'm giving you this information based upon either you yourself are looking and trying to figure out, am I involved in an emotional affair? Or maybe it's your spouse and they just haven't seen clearly what they're walking into. So this will give you the opportunity to know whether or not you yourself are involved or your spouse is involved so that it can be addressed properly. So here are those telltale signs. First, you notice that your spouse is emotionally withdrawn or distracted, or maybe you notice that you are. You're in the marriage physically, but you're not in your marriage emotionally, right? You've withdrawn, you're distracted, you are just not there. Or maybe you suddenly are protective of your phone or your social media accounts because there are some things that are very clear to you that are hidden. Your spouse doesn't know anything about it, right? So if there are things that are hidden and you're protecting those things, that's a good sign that you're involved in an emotional affair. Also, maybe there's defensiveness when you are asked about a certain person. Okay, or if your spouse approaches you and asks you about a certain person, you are very defensive about it. Another is communication between you and your spouse feels very superficial. It feels tense all the time, or maybe you're just talking about the kids or the weather or just finances. There's no depth to your conversations any longer. You're no longer dreaming together. You're no longer sharing the deep parts of your heart with one another. It's just a daily conversation that you would have with any given person. Or maybe another sign is that you seem emotionally invested elsewhere. You're talking about the person you're emotionally connected with. You're talking about them often. You're maybe comparing them to your spouse, right? You're longing to talk to them, right? These are very, very clear signs. And the last one I want to share with you is there's a noticeable decrease in intimacy both emotionally and physically inside of your marriage. You've disconnected there, right? So you're not as intimate as you used to be. You're not talking about the deep-rooted things in your heart any longer. So there's a lack of emotional connection. You notice that the physical connection's not there. You don't sit beside each other as much. The holding hands has kind of stopped. The touching whatsoever, maybe. Even sex in the bedroom has diminished. These can happen if you're involved in an emotional affair with someone else. So these are signs to look for. Now, these behaviors don't always confirm that there's an emotional affair taking place, but they are strong indicators that emotional boundaries have definitely been crossed and need to be addressed. So if you realize that you're in an emotional affair, what do? Right? You're like, oh my gosh, this has been a wake-up call. Or you're the spouse who is looking at your spouse and you're like, oh my gosh, that's exactly what they're doing right now. Well, what do? Well, first, you step back, pause, and take a deep breath. Because you need to understand this is not the end of your story, but it is a wake-up call. And here are the steps that you need to take right now in order to start turning things around. So I'm going to give you 7 steps that you need to start implementing right away. The first one is you need to acknowledge the truth. So stop minimizing what has happened and what is happening. Admit that emotional infidelity has taken place. It is the truth that sets us free, Scripture says. Okay? It is the truth that sets us free. Proverbs 28:13 also tells us, whoever conceals their sins does not prosper, but the one who confesses and renounces them finds mercy. So acknowledgement is always step number 1. You've got to come face to face with the truth. Step number 2 is this: end the relationship completely and immediately. Don't wait. You stop just hem-hawing around and stop making excuses. Stop justifying it. End the relationship completely and immediately. You must go non-contact. So block, delete, and remove all access, okay? You can't rebuild trust with one foot still inside of the betrayal. If you are seeking to restore your relationship, you've got to take your foot out of the betrayal. Number 3 is this: disclose the truth to your spouse. And I know some of you just grabbed your chest and you're like, wait, what? What do you mean, tell my spouse? I mean, I didn't sleep with this person. It wasn't physical. Why do I need to tell him if it was an emotional affair? Because the truth is what heals and sets us free. You should always walk in truth. Secrets in marriage is definitely like cancer to the body. It will kill it eventually. It will be found out. Scripture tells us that the things that are hidden will be exposed. So disclose the truth to your spouse. Bring everything into the light. Secrecy breeds shame. Truth, on the other hand, invites healing. Yes, is it going to hurt your spouse? 100%. It really will. But it's the only way to begin restoration. Step 4 is this: seek godly and professional help. Healing from an emotional betrayal requires both spiritual and practical guidance. So work with a Christian betrayal-trained counselor, one who specializes in infidelity, or a coach, right? That's what I do. I specialize in betrayal trauma and infidelity recovery. We understand the trauma that this causes, and you need someone who can walk you through this. Here's step 5. Rebuild emotional intimacy at home. This is necessary. So begin investing your emotional energy back where it belongs, with your spouse. All that energy you were putting into that emotional affair, it now goes back into the marriage. It is now directed directly to your spouse. Start sharing your thoughts, your dreams, and daily connection again needs to start happening right away. Step number 6, recommit to boundaries. Now, this is where you can create new boundaries together. This is a great thing to do. And then appropriate communication with the opposite sex. In other words, make sure that you are in a group setting. You're never alone with the opposite sex. You never text or call the opposite sex or on social media with the opposite sex without your spouse knowing. It's called the Billy Graham rule. You don't even give the illusion that something is taking place, okay? So you need to have appropriate communication with the opposite sex underneath the boundary guidelines. Have phone transparency and open honesty with your spouse. And here's step number 7. Invite God to restore what was broken. True transformation happens when we invite Holy Spirit into the places where secrecy once lived. Okay, so we've got to take secrets off the table and live openly, honestly, all complete vulnerable. So this is what we do. In order to be restored, this must take place. Psalm 51:10 tells us, "Create in me a clean heart, O God, and renew a right spirit within me." That's the heart posture that is needed when there's been an emotional affair. Not shame, not self-hatred, but true, deep repentance, remorse, and renewal. That's what needs to happen here. Because here's the truth. Emotional affairs may feel like connection in the moment, but they always lead to destruction, deception, and division. But when brought into the light, they can become the starting point for deeper truth, stronger boundaries, and a marriage that's redesigned by grace. So I know I gave you a lot today, and I know this episode went long, but it was much needed because I've been dealing with this thing right here inside of our couples program time and time again, and I know that people need to hear the truth when it comes to emotional affairs. Then if you and your spouse are navigating the aftermath of emotional infidelity, I want you to know that healing is possible for you. Inside of our Marriage Redesigned program, we walk couples step by step through the process of rebuilding trust, restoring emotional connection, and redesigning your marriage into something stronger than it's ever been. You'll learn how to establish safety, security, stability, transparency. You'll learn how to rebuild spiritual intimacy. All the intimacies, there's 14 different dimensions that we teach you, and create new rhythms that invite lasting change. So go below in the show notes, click on that Marriage Redesigned button below that link so that you can not only learn more, but over there, I've got a free consult for you. Get on that consult so that we can meet with you and your spouse and we can see if this is a good fit for you. You don't have to keep living in secrecy or disconnection. God can redeem this and we can help you get there. So I want to thank you for hanging tight with me today because I know it was a long one. But if this episode spoke to you, then share it with somebody who needs it. And please leave us a 5-star written review. We'd love to shout you out on the next program. And we want to make sure that all couples find hope and healing that they need. So remember this, beauty truly does rise from the ashes when you surrender your story to the one who restores. And his name is Jesus. I'll see you next time. Bye for now. Thanks for stopping by and spending a little time with me today. I hope you enjoyed today's show and you found hope, healing, and encouragement. Please remember to subscribe to my podcast and leave a review. You can even screenshot this episode. You can share it out on Facebook and IG stories. This is how we get the message of hope and healing out to all women and couples who are in need of restoration after betrayal. And if you're ready to move out of that devastation and take the next step in your healing journey, well, make sure to reach out. Schedule your coaching session today. Until next time, love God, live your life passionately, and always choose joy in the midst of any circumstance that you may face. Cheers to you, beautiful.